Welcome back to The Nation and welcome to our media panel, media commentator Irene Gardiner and listener columnist Bill Ralston. Welcome to you both.
Morning.
Now, this week, the New Zealand Herald celebrated its 150th birthday. We've got a photo from the birthday party. On the left is Shane Curry, the current editor. Former editors then, Gavin Ellis and Peter Shearer, and current Editor-in-Chief Tim Murphy. And from what I understand, Bill Ralston, it was quite the party.
I think it must have been. You know, they do know how to carry on. And in fact, I think I saw Tim Murphy tweeting that early risers at the Herald encountered a lot of celebrants leaving the Shakespeare pub at sort of 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning. I really enjoyed that edition. I like the magazine. I like going back. I like the approach that they had of making a New Zealander of the year for every one of those 150 years. Not sure about Richie McCaw. In the sense that when you compare him to some of the others, he may not have been the best choice, but never mind. That photograph, by the way, of those four editors, I was talking to someone yesterday and they were right when they said part of the strength of the Herald is having very strong leadership and having had a series of really good editors that have driven it along, certainly in the post-war era anyway. And 150
years, really, that's quite something to celebrate, isn't it?
It is something to celebrate, and I think I agree with Bill. I think they did it very well in both the printed 150th edition, but also the companion to that online. And I think that sort of brings us to kind of one of the reasons that the Herald is successful still, is they've always kept abreast of what is happening and the technology that they need to move with. It's actually quite difficult for an entity to celebrate 150th, a media entity, without sort of that fear that you're kind of like, oh, we're really old, that's old hat, But because they've got now a really strong website and that presence, that's their future, presumably, because we don't know how much longer the print edition will
unlikely
continue.
We'll be having a 300th celebration, will there be, of the print version? But they have owned that online market, haven't they?
Yeah, the brand. That paywall question is coming back again too, and I think sometime in the next 12 to 18 months, the Herald will have to go behind a paywall, perhaps like the New York Times.
All of it or part of it?
Well, that's right. I mean, I think you'll be able to access some parts of it, or maybe 7 stories a month or something like that. But it's insane for them to keep giving away their content for free, I think a lot of people have made the choice of actually cancelling the paper because they can read it on a tablet.
I think interesting in the UK, I remember with the Sunday Times and the Times, their opinion pieces were always so strong that they put all of those behind the paywall, and to a certain degree that started to encourage people, I think, to sign up because they wanted to get those opinion pieces.
I suspect that's what we'll start to see now. It's just interesting, how that will evolve and the timing. I mean, I think of myself as quite old school, quite low tech, but I'm at that point now where I've been doing a sort of a mixture of online and sometimes, and reading the hard copy. Now I'm so online, I'm at the point of cancelling my subscriptions. And if someone as kind of low tech as me is now at that point. So I think there's some hard decisions there as they look forward into, and yes, which bits do you put behind the paywall? Is it the columns? Is it the whole thing?
Your point about the opinions, that's another strength for the Herald. It has columnists like John Armstrong, Fran O'Sullivan, Brian Rudman, people like that who actually...
And see, I would pay for that stuff because they are special. Right. They're strong. They've got the strong columnists.
Yeah, you want perspective, don't you?
Yeah.
OK. Also this week, TVNZ has a new logo and a new lineup for 2014. Let's look at what will be on the box first.
Need to report what I saw. Get a lab box, take a sample of his blood for analysis.
How much does Oscar rock? He's like a mega talent, isn't he, Dad?
You could have done something like this if you'd kept up with your recorder.
Oscar was found on Harbour Cliff Beach at Broadchurch.
So, Irene, what do you make of what TVNZ's announced for 2014?
Well, interestingly, that show that we just saw a little bit in the last bit of that montage was Broadchurch, a drama coming out of Britain with David Tennant, ex-Doctor Who, in it. And that's one of the shows I am most personally excited about because I'm a big fan of him, and apparently that show is really great. I was also, just on a personal level, very pleased to see that The Following is returning to TV1 because that was my favourite new show of this past year. On a broader level, I guess the interesting things are they've still got their big international deals and a lot of big, solid international shows, which is quite different than TV3's program launch, where they're moving more local and more individual deals. And a really big influence on science fiction. The first show we saw there is a new show out of America called Almost Human, which people will have noticed stars Carl Urban, who is from New Zealand. But yeah, lots of science fiction. And I mean, it's a huge trend in a genre, but I just wonder, for TVNZ, they're quite slow on getting the new shows through in this day of, you know, alternative ways of watching, finding them online. And I just wonder if the kind of people who watch those kind of shows will have seen them already. They're those sort of viewers. So that'll be interesting to see. It was a reasonable sort of a launch. You know, there's some good stuff coming, yes. I wasn't like massively overwhelmed by anything in particular, but it was solid. There's solid stuff in the lineup.
I noticed that you know, they've got Rake, the Australian series, which has been screening on one of the Sky channels, I think Rialto. It's funny to see stuff being presented as new when...
Although there are two versions of Rake. There's an Australian and an American version, so we might
be the American.
Yes. Okay. But just picking up on you were saying there, though, it's interesting. There's two main Australian series coming through there: Upper Middle Bogan and Secrets and Lie, both with Kiwi stars. The same as the Carl Urban thing popping up in the American one. We've got Robin Malcolm starring in Upper Middle Bogan, and Martin Henderson starring in Secrets and Lies. So it's quite nice to see that even though we're getting, you know, Australian and American dramas, they're all full of New Zealanders anyway. So.
All right. Also, there's a new look logo, we think, at TVNZ. Here it is. Now, I'm not sure it's been launched yet, but it was on the bottom of Q&A's email that they sent out announcing what was going to be on the show. So we lifted it because we thought, new brand, looks like this is the new logo.
How many hundreds of thousands of dollars were put into that?
It's reminding me of something. It's not Chorus, it's not Telecom, it's
it is
something
a bit
like that.
chorusy.
Yeah, might be.
Maybe it isn't the new logo. Maybe the email you got just had a really old logo. Because it actually looks a bit like one I've seen before.
Yeah, it looks like the same font.
The font is an original font from, when I was working there about 10 years ago.
I was just going to say, I did work at TVNZ a long time and I seem to have seen a lot of logos. Maybe they've all just blurred into one.
Maybe we've just announced that it's not the real logo. Well, there we go. We'll hopefully find out this week. Also, one of our greatest bands, Split Enz, made their first ever screen appearance on NZBC's New Faces Talent Quest in 1973. For years, no one knew where that archive footage was, but Irene has some good news for us. First, let's have a look at this.
Hiding in the wings forever. We'll take the stage. It's now or never. And the whole thing reeks of cheap striptease. The matinee idols, they all fall to their knees. It's not our first night.
Oh, the youth.
That was on the 18th of November 1973, 40 years ago on Monday, their TV debut. That was the heat of New Faces, which they won, and they went on to the final a week later, which they didn't win.
Right, that was won by the
Bulldogs
Bulldogs.
All-Star Good Time Band.
There they are, the Bulldogs All-Star Good Time Band. Look at those
I think they were considered a little too ambitious and experimental. But the footage, it's an interesting story behind the footage. The TVNZ version of that program of New Faces has not been kept. There's the archive is really good, the TVNZ archive, but they haven't kept everything. The odd thing has been lost. But a family friend of the Finns shot it on Super 8 off the telly screen. It's actually in a documentary we've had on NZ On Screen called Spellbound, which is quite old now, but it's sort of the definitive Split Enz documentary. But it is also now on Neil's website, which is how we got it. Jeremy Ansell, who runs Neil's website, gave it to us.
That's the only way you can record anything off television those days, was to actually shoot it on film yourself.
So that's the young Tim being shot off the telly on Super 8.
Young indeed. All right. OK, well, thank you both, Irene Gardiner and Bill Ralston. Appreciate you coming in this morning.